What's up, guys? 0-2 yesterday. Both legitimate losses, although I will say both final scores were misleadingly high. The Braves-Nationals game had 5 innings where no runs were scored, 5 out of the 9. There was a 7 spot for Washington. Washington only scored in 2 of the innings, although they didn't hit in the bottom of the 9th. But when a team doesn't bat in the bottom of the 9th, that just helps your under because you're just getting fewer opportunities for the teams to score, but at that point it was already over. But both teams, basically every base runner that they had came around to score. Like the hit totals in that game were extremely low. I think it was an 8-5 final, and neither team got into the double digits in hits. So kind of a misleading result there. And then the other game, what can you say about that? Twins and Pirates. That game was right on the 8 through 9 innings, and it wound up at 16. We had 8 runs scored in extra innings in the 10th inning, I think, with a 7 spot in that game too. But that was a game that pushed in regulation, basically, in the 9 innings. It was right at 8, but it was 4-4, so you needed another run to break the tie. So that was a loss. Bad. We move on to today. It's a small card today. I'm going to play the hockey game. I haven't played a hockey game in a while. I'm going to come in and fade the public in this one based on what I think is kind of a misleading Game 1 result, even though I do think Florida is going to eventually win the series. They have the better goaltending, the better defense, and they're the more physical team, to the point where I think they are probably getting away with some plays that probably should be penalties and aren't being called. Florida is down from minus 140 to minus 133 in this one. They were up into the minus 140s in Game 1. Either way, I think you can still just grab a decent underdog price on Edmonton here at plus 120. Florida's a little bit public at 52% of the tickets. It looks like they have 61% of the cash, but I don't know if that's actually accurate because we see the line moving down on Florida. I think this is a bounce back spot for Edmonton. I think Game 1 was it was a misleading result. I'm not even sure that Florida should have actually won the game, even though they had the better goaltending. That was the story of the game, but Bobrovsky is the better goaltender, and he had like 32 saves or whatever. Didn't allow a goal. That's, even when you have a hot goaltender, a goalie that's really good, that's pretty out of the ordinary that you're not going to allow anything. Florida with a 3-0 win, even though Edmonton outshot them 32-18. And it wasn't just because Edmonton was losing either. Like, Edmonton outshot them, I think, in all 3 periods. Edmonton just had way more shots. They had more scoring opportunities. They were doing more on offense. It was a shockingly low shot total for Florida. So does that mean Florida realizes that and they're going to adjust in this game? Maybe. But Edmonton outplayed them, and that was not reflected on the scoreboard at all. So I actually think there's value in taking Edmonton here after losing that game. Despite playing well, people are going to think they got outplayed in that game, which they really didn't. So we can grab Edmonton at plus 120, and that's going to be my one play today because they did have the better offensive performance. They were able to hold Florida to a really low amount of shots, which I don't expect that to happen again to that extreme, but I expect this game to be not a 3-0 Florida win in this one. I expect a bounce back from Edmonton and some sort of regression as far as the score is concerned back to kind of the way these teams are played, or the way these teams have played, I should say, or played in Game 1. Then I'm not going to have anything in MLB, although I will say the closest that I would be to making a play in Major League Baseball would be to fade the New York Yankees. I think this is one spot where it makes sense to fade them. There are just a couple of issues I have with it. Because you know what I do, man. On Monday, it's a short baseball card. I go in and I look to see what teams played in the ESPN night game, and that was Yankees-Dodgers. That was a hyped series, like a big series between the teams that are possibly the best in each league, the potential World Series preview. And the Dodgers took the first 2 of the 3. The Yankees won last night in somewhat dramatic fashion. I think they were only winning the game by 1 pretty late in the game and wound up getting a 2-run homer or something to kind of put the game away. Yankees used a few relievers yesterday, but you play the late game like that and you win in a big win like that, it tends to put you in a bad spot, like a letdown spot coming into the next game, even though the Yankees are going out on the road to start a road trip with a little bit of momentum off of that. So that there are reasons why that makes it a little bit of a positive for the Yankees, though I think because they played the late game, short turnaround time, they have to go travel to the central time zone now to Kansas City, and they're off that big win, off that high with a win over the Dodgers. It does seem like a letdown spot for me. For the New York Yankees, Kansas City, however, they did play a 10-inning game yesterday, and they lost. And I believe they're staying at home here. I think they lost in 10 innings to Seattle, and they almost were still able to win. I think they gave up 3 runs to Seattle in the top of the 10th inning or whatever, and scored 2 to almost still retie the game or potentially win the game. Kansas City could have swept the Mariners. I think they were on the verge of sweeping Seattle in that one, and they lost the last game. So Kansas City, they could be in a bounce back spot there off that loss, but they did have to play 1 extra inning there. And one of the main issues I have with this is that Kansas City used a lot of their bullpen yesterday. The Yankees, I think, only used 3 relief pitchers yesterday, even though it was in a tough game where they had to hold off the Dodgers. Kansas City, I think, used 6 relief pitchers yesterday. Their bullpen is not the greatest, so some of these relievers that they used are not really that good. So it's like, do I care that they're even unavailable? I don't know. But Kansas City's bullpen is definitely blown out more than the Yankees is. So in a situation where you're playing against a team coming off the Sunday night game and a letdown like this, I usually tend to like to make this a full game play. But I think in this one, if you want to play Kansas City, I do still agree with that side, but I would make it a first 5-inning play because Kansas City's bullpen is really taxed after yesterday's extra inning game. So that's the way I would do it. Yankees are pretty public road favorite here. 75% of the tickets, only 53% of the cash. So it looks like the cash discrepancy is against the very public Yankees. It looks like more of the bigger money might be on the Kansas City side here. Yankees holding steady for now at minus 125 on the road. So you can get Kansas City at a decent home underdog price. But I would take the bullpens out of the equation, like I said. And I do think the starting pitching matchup actually benefits Kansas City slightly in this one. And, of course, the fact that it's a letdown spot for the Yankees, which could have the effect early in the game as well. So if I was going to play this, I would play Kansas City first 5. Carlos Rodon is pitching for the Yankees, and his stats against against Kansas City's hitters are actually pretty bad. He's been pitching well this season, but Kansas City, in a decent sample size, hits over 300 against him. So he has not done well against them. Seth Lugo on the other side for Kansas City having a shockingly good season, even though he's in his mid-30s. He's had really good control this season, really low walk number, pretty good strikeout walk ratio, even though his strikeout totals aren't really that high. He's not really a guy that comes in and blows you away, but he's really not putting many men on base. He's got pretty good numbers this year, both his whip and his ERA, and he's going for Kansas City. He has better numbers against the Yankees lineup than Rodon does against Kansas City's lineup, although it's not that significant, but Seth Lugo holds the Yankees lineup to like a 270-something batting average, so it is still a little bit better. Somewhat impressive given how powerful the Yankees lineup is. So those are my comments on baseball. That's the strongest lean, I would say, would be a first 5-inning play on the Kansas City Royals. The one play is in hockey on the Edmonton Oilers at plus 120. Let's get it done, man. Let's get back on track after yesterday. Start the week off. Peace.